Guten Tag, meine Gruppe, because we're looking at a Hofner today. It's old. It's also funky. This thing smells like it was kept in a cave. Like there's a serious mildew stench coming off of it. So it must have been stored in a very wet basement for a very long time. This is a Model 850, the President. It was manufactured specifically for foreign export, and it was distributed in Britain via the Selmer Company. Some of you will know the name Selmer associated with the Machiavelli-style guitars played by Django Reinhardt. It's a French company, but for some reason they had a British division that was kind of independent. I'm not really sure how the arrangement worked, but they were into a whole lot of early sort of sound reinforcement stuff. They distributed things like the Leslie speakers and various organs, and from the 1950s up into the 70s they also imported guitars from Hofner for sale in the UK and the Commonwealth. The President went through a number of iterations. It started off as a full-bodied acoustic guitar in 1953. In 56 they made an electric version, and then in 59 they came out with a thin-line variant, of which this is an example. Narrowing the date further might be challenging. This one doesn't have a serial number on the label. Apparently some of them do. And the history of Hofner serial numbers is a bit hit and miss anyway. Sometimes there'll be a date on the underside of the top, but they're very difficult to find. So let's go through the deduction. This has an adjustable truss rod, which means it's made after 1960. The pickups are Model 511s, the so-called staple pickup, which was used between 63 and 1966. In mid-1965 they did a redesign, and rather than this Venetian-style cutaway, they went to a Florentine, the pointy kind. So my best guess is this was made between 1963 and maybe early 1965. There have been a few cosmetic and functional changes. These black witch hat knobs are not original. The old ones would have been white, and they look like something you'd find on a transistor radio. Also, their orientation has moved around some, even making allowances for the fact that, tone and volume are backwards in this set here. But originally, both volume pots were above the F-hole. Both tone pots were down here below it, which is confusing. Confusing enough that someone had it changed around to the more familiar Gibson arrangement. Volumes up front, tones behind. I had a look through the F-hole with a little mirror, and I believe that the pots themselves were changed. They've been swapped out, so they're not the originals. These white pickup rings here are not original. The staple pickups mounted to the top. There weren't cutouts under them. I guess the idea was to keep the top intact and increase its effectiveness as an acoustic instrument. I see someone has used multiply pickguard material under the bridge pickup here. There's no telling what else is going on under there yet. Maybe when the pots were switched, someone cut a hole, which, I'll be honest, I would not be infuriated by, because this guitar has a grounding issue, and I'm going to have to get to those electronics. In its pristine state, I think that means fishing the entire harness through the F-hole here, which I'm kind of dreading, because you can imagine it's going to be a fun job. So yeah, the player has noticed that annoying buzz, which goes away if he touches the pickup cover, thereby grounding things with his body. He's been trying to develop a technique where he keeps a finger on it at all times while he's playing, and that can be kind of awkward. With the swampy smell, I wonder if some humidity has just corroded things in there and compromised a solder joint or two. I also wonder if whoever did the previous work remembered to ground the tailpiece. That happens sometimes. There's nothing worse than getting all that harness back into place and then realizing you forgot it. Maybe you can live with that buzz. Some very, very green remnants of a wire came off the end here. I don't think the tailpiece was grounded. Let's have a look at the pickups. Someone was busy. What? This is made in Japan. No, they're not the original pickups. That's let me look this up. This is weird. Okay, I had a look on drowninginguitars.com, which is a site I like that has this page that's full of oddball Japanese pickups from the 60s and 70s. All kinds of them. You scroll for half an hour. I can't find this exact one. It resembles some from Greco or Kawai, and it is quite similar to the 511. Like, if you were going to replace the 511 with Japanese pickup, this one would be it. How did they manage to find it? I don't know. I just want to know what the story was. Why did this happen? So all this stuff here, all the drilling, that's done to accommodate these pickups. The originals are basically clean under there. They sit in a small, it's like a smaller black plastic ring that has grub screws on either side to hold the pickup in place. It sort of floats. It's very minimalist mounting. Neither of these pickups has a hole big enough to get the harness through. I checked this one as well. Okay, I've been fighting this for some time now, and I'm coming to the conclusion that it ain't going to happen. These appear to be alpha pots, something similar. The tone caps are green plastic rather than the small ceramic disc caps that Hofner was using. But most importantly, these pots seem to be bigger than the ones that Hofner installed, and I can't get them out. I've tried every direction and placement and orientation and up and down and left and right. I think it's one of these cases where there was enough give in the wing of the F-hole here that you could push them in, but it's like a finger trap. It's not coming out again the same way it went in without breaking something. And I don't want to do that. So, you know, I got to put a hold on this and talk to the customer, because it looks like I get to be the one who desecrates the top and cuts a big hole out underneath the pickup, because there's just no way. It's not so bad. I'm not the first one here. Someone else did all of this. And virtually every Gibson thin line guitar has a similar hole under its bridge pickup, so it'll be okay. In the future, if someone finds a set of 511s and wants to replace this to original, this will be covered by the outline of that pickup too, so it's all right. It's interesting. There have been previous holes drilled through here, or cut, probably for, I don't know, there's extra holes on the outside as well, almost like this was like a dog ear P90 would have fit on there. It's interesting, there was a previous channel cut through here and filled with epoxy. You see there's actually a plane shaving stuffed in there. From a previous installation, I imagine there was a different kind of pickup with different screw locations. So, trying to clean this up as much as we can. I'm probably going to add some extra support in this area that I've just cut through, because as we know, putting a hole in the top can weaken it. But the good thing is, those wires will come through here no problem. You can see why some noise might develop. These are, it looks to me like someone took a harness out of a Teisco or something and put the entire thing in here. Here's why black electrical tape is not the greatest idea for this sort of work. Over time it just ends up this disgusting sticky mess. It breaks down. You'd be better off using like plain white masking tape. Most of the numbers on these have been blotted out with solder, but this one has 971 on it, which could be September of 1971 is the date. Interestingly, for 500K pots, they're using 0.04 microfarad caps in them. Experience has taught me that when you find yourself doing this kind of archtop job, it makes sense to change anything that has the potential to wear out while you're in there, because the labor involved in removing and replacing this whole wiring harness far exceeds the cost of something like a jack, for instance. This thing has been in here for 50 plus years, doesn't owe us anything. So you change it now rather than wait till it breaks. And it's the same with the other hardware. I'm going to use metal shielded cable, CTS pots, orange drop caps, and I'm going to test everything because I don't want to have to drag it out again. And this also extends to the pickup connections. It makes sense to shorten them and put a splice in neatly in a place that's accessible via the pickup cavity. So down the road, if someone wants to change the pickup, it's a 15-minute job. There's the whole harness. I tried to make it as neat as possible. I decided to try using strings through the control holes this time, as has been suggested on several occasions in the comment section. Usually I put a length of plastic drinking straw on the ends of the shafts. I'll jockey them into position and pull them up with tweezers or surgical pickups. This method is okay. I'm using dental floss here. I'm not sure how much quicker it is. There's still a moment of awkward physicality as you hold the thing in place and try and find some way of cutting the string. In retrospect, I would have had something like a clothespin handy to clip onto the shaft and hold it in place rather than pinching my finger, but live and learn. Here's the tailpiece grounding wire. I've stripped off some of the insulation and I'll bend it up in such a way that it's not going to slip back down the hole when I install the tailpiece. It's the same situation again this week. These Japanese knobs don't want to fit on the CTS pots. Wrong size, wrong knurling. So once again I heat up a discarded pot shaft with the soldering iron until it's good and hot, and then just jam the knobs in place. The plastic forms to the knurling pattern and they become easy to install. To reinforce the areas fore and aft of the cavity, I've cut some spruce and, borrowing a technique from Fred Carlson, I'm going to laminate these in place. The thin layers will conform to the arch as it's being clamped and sort of act like a leaf spring. I've got to make sure to sand and clean that inner surface very well because it's probably dirty enough that the braces would fall right off otherwise. While that glue is curing, let's do a little bonus clip featuring this 1957 Gibson Les Paul Jr. This is in really nice shape. It's got some beautiful checking on it. The owner recently purchased this and he's concerned about a crack. These tuners have been replaced at least a couple of times, and it looks like someone tried to drive in a screw that was a little bit thick for its hole, and the mahogany was rebellious. There was some contention that maybe this was just in the lacquer, and let me tell you friends, if you find yourself wondering if something is just in the lacquer, odds are it's not. So I'm going to glue this. You know, it might stay this way forever. It's a tight crack, but it might also keep traveling up into the neck and get worse and worse. So it's always best to glue these things while they're still as clean as possible. To clamp this together, I need to make a set of custom padded cawls, because I can't just slap a clamp on it. The finish would crack and the wood would get dented. So I bandsawed out the traced outlines there and used contact cement to stick on some cork, which I'll actually cover over with masking tape, as the cork can get stuck in little fissures in an old finish and then peel it up when it's being removed. I'm using slightly thinned fish glue. I'll go at it several times, pumping the glue in with the suction cup. You can see the jigs are shaped so that I have parallel surfaces for the clamps to hold on to. And during my test run I realized I needed a little cutaway in part of the cawl to give me enough access for cleanup. Okay, I think we're set to go here. I realized I didn't show you the back. It's a lovely flamed maple. It's laminated, but it's still lovely. 5-piece neck. And I think these tuners are probably off that Japanese guitar as well. It's like half German, half Japanese. Here's something you don't often find inside a guitar. You see that strip there that's got holes in it? Looks kind of like an old film strip. It's actually veneer tape, which is a very thin paper tape used to hold pieces of veneer together while they're being glued. Interesting set of pickups. They sound like halfway between a Rickenbacker and a Gretsch. A little thinner sounding. The noise is calmed down. They're not dead silent, but it's much, much better. And it's quieter than your average set of single coils in a good quality Strat. So I'm calling this a win. It's a very light guitar. I mean, it's super featherweight for the size. I think maybe the case should be set outside, open to the air on a nice sunny day, and maybe an air freshener dangled in the F-hole there for a while, because it still smells kind of like the Swamp Thing, but it's very fun to play.